This is an introduction to rigid transformations. In this video, we're going to go over what a rigid transformation is at its basic. We'll go over the three types of rigid transformations briefly, and we'll also discuss the essential vocabulary for the unit. So, what is a rigid transformation? It is a change in an image's location and or orientation. However, the key word is rigid. Rigid means stiff or inflexible. In other words, the shape that we are starting with is going to still be the shape we end up with. It's not going to change its shape, and it's also not going to change its size. So for example, if I have this package of wet ones, and I move it over here, it's still a package of wet ones. It still is familiar to us as a package of wet ones. If I turn it upside down, it's still a package of wet ones. You can still tell where the top of it is, or is supposed to be, is down here now, and where the bottom of it is, which is up here now. We could even flip it over, and we're looking at the back side now. But we still know that this is the same old package of wet ones that we've had the entire time. So when we're talking about rigid transformations, the shape is not changing. The reason why this is important is because corresponding lengths and angles will remain congruent to their originals. Congruent means that it has equal measure. So in other words, if we take this pre-image here, where we have this image in which the red dot is out on the right side, and then we rotate it so that the red dot is now on top, we still have those corresponding points, and the angle measure of that corresponding angle is going to be exactly the same as the original. There are three types of rigid transformations. We've got translation, reflection, and rotation. Translation is the simplest of the three. All it means is that the image is moving to a new location. So if I start with the wet ones over here, and I am told to move the wet ones down and to the right, then that is what's going to happen to the wet ones, and now they're down here. So, very simple process. You might have, for example, being told, translate this image 3 units to the right and 2 units down. And you would literally count 1, 2, 3 units to the right and 2 units down to find the new location of your image. We'll go over that more in another video if you want more specifics. Reflection flips the image over a line of reflection. So that was when we took the wet ones and we flipped it over so that we saw the backside. The key here, though, is that there's something called a line of reflection. So we're not just flipping it over in place, we are flipping it over a certain line. So let's say that the meter stick represents our line of reflection. Our wet ones are being flipped over the line so that not only are the wet ones facing the other way, but they're also on the other side of the line. So for example, with this shape, it's starting on the left side and with the pointy part facing in towards the line, and then as it reflects, it's now facing the opposite direction, but once again, the pointy part is still facing towards the line of reflection. And then finally, rotation. It spins the image around a center of rotation. For example, you might be told to rotate the image 180 degrees around point A, and point A would be given on the grid. In that case, you would have to take your image, and let's say that the end of our meter stick is point A, and here's our wet ones. Our wet ones would rotate around point A so that the wet ones would be on the other side of the point and they'd be upside down as well. So that's a rotation. As I said, we'll go over each one in more detail in separate videos, give you a few concrete examples involving a coordinate grid that you can use to practice with.